Good evening. It's another night for Strange Normal. Hope everyone is having a great evening this evening, and everyone is joining the Discord, joining the chat, the live chat we have right now. Tonight's gonna be an interesting night. I'm looking at the chat, seeing who's all filtering in. We have concurrent viewers going up here. We're going to interview Courtney Brown. Now, Courtney is an interesting character. If you remember, we talked about him previously. But to find out what I have to say about him, you'll have to just wait. See you very soon.
I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated.
Demon spirits will declare themselves to be inhabitants of 5 distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet.
It is now 90 seconds to midnight.
I still think these are what people call angels. I'm dying to know what they've got to say.
Severe suffering brings.
These entities have the ability to appear in any form.
Strange Normal. My name is Bradley, and we talk about the stranger things that happen in your normal life to give you a biblical understanding of what is going on. And there is a lot going on, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon, so you're notified when things like this happen. Folks, tonight's episode is going to be very interesting. I've been working on it all day long in parts of this last week. Putting things together because I have to tell you, it's a little bit controversial. I wasn't sure as I went through this topic if I really wanted to dig further into this, but I thought it would be fascinating to talk to someone that truly does believe in the other side of things. For instance, I have a Christian worldview. Everyone knows that. This is a Christian podcast channel, but it would be interesting to actually see the great controversy from a different perspective so we can understand what's happening from a different worldview. And we're instructed to do that. I'm going to go into that when I start the program here. But keep in mind that this is not technically a worship service. This is a research institute. We're understanding things better so that we can better serve the community. So if that's something that you're into and that's something you want to know more about, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon. And also, if you want to join us doing this all the time, because we do this 24/7, 7 days a week, join our Patreon, patreon.com/strangenormal, and you can join us in the Discord, our private community, where we can talk, chat, and have direct access to each other all the time. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it, and I'll meet you on the other end of it at the end of the program, because we've had so much trouble tonight with cameras and stuff, and I that's indicative of this being a very fascinating program, I'm sure. All right, so here we go. A while back, we talked about a man named Courtney Brown who had been using expensive camera equipment to film the sky to watch for bizarre movements in the atmosphere. Dr. Brown is not a small-time researcher. He's a professor at Emory University, although he would say himself that,
Oh yeah, I don't do any of this at Emory. At my university, I teach mathematics courses in the social science program, statistics and nonlinear modeling, and I teach elections and voting, and I teach statistics and stuff. So, but I don't do any of this at my university. That's my day job, and I do this all outside at Farsight.
in his spare time, Dr. Brown is the director of Farsight, a company that takes an old military concept called remote viewing to the next level. And although Courtney Brown and I don't have the same worldview or agreement on what is actually occurring with Farsight, I reached out to him anyway to see if he would be willing to talk specifically about being able to capture these strange phenomenon that the government is saying they are seeing daily. I almost didn't get an interview with Dr. Brown, though, due to my Christian worldview. But after assuring him that this interview would not become an assassination attempt on his character or work, he agreed to do an interview. So for this interview, I'm going to let him talk and then splice in my own understanding of what's going on here with data to back it up on my own claims. This way, both ideas are presented, and the truth will be decided according to the listener. As a Christian, it is my goal to be a blessing to others in all circumstances. If after watching this interview you feel that I have been too soft or quiet while interviewing him, you need to stick your nose back in your Bible and check your Christianity. There are far too many Christians who want to slam or choke someone whom they don't agree with. These people are not Christian. This is not Christ's method. When you initially meet someone, it is not time to thump them with the Bible, especially when they are viewing God as a tyrant or they have had a bad experience with God and some Christians in the past. Or maybe the Bible is, for whatever reason, not their foundation. As I told him, we would not argue, but I will ask him some questions. My goal was to understand his worldview better, as we are instructed by White. We should study the nature, character, and extent of this spiritual wickedness in high places, lest we become dupes of the powers of darkness. So let's get into the interview. Thank you so much, Courtney, for joining me in this broadcast. I think it's fascinating what you're doing. And primarily, I saw you on another podcast talking about how you have some DSLR cameras which you've had a company modify in order to view things that the eye can't normally see. And I think that's really interesting that you have captured some things that are out there. And I want to know a little more about that and your story behind it and how you discovered this.
We have been studying the UFO phenomenon from the perspective of what we do called remote viewing, which is a mental process that came out of the U.S. military and was used for espionage, but we're civilian and we use it for scientific experiments and exploration a long time.
He's right. The remote viewing idea did come out of the military, but its origins date farther back than that. In biblical times, remote viewing was known as divination. The definition of divination was the art or practice that seeks to foresee or foretell the future events or simply to discover hidden knowledge by aid of supernatural power. Now, he may believe that these powers are of his own, but Christianity believes that these powers are from fallen angels. Divination was forbidden by the God of Israel in the Bible, and this is the same guiding principle that Christians are grafted in today.
And so we had to come out, and so we started to describe exactly everything that we do. We have real physical meetings with extraterrestrials in secure locations, and the ships are there and the whole thing. But
You've seen this. You've seen this. Admittedly, I don't know much about you. So
I have not only seen them, I've been on the ships, the whole thing. They've been working with us very closely for a very long time.
It was at this moment when I knew this was not going to be a normal interview. Seeing lights in the sky is something I can accept, and seeing beings materialize is something I can accept as well, but I never thought I would be speaking to someone who has direct communication with non-human intelligence. I want to remind everyone that according to MUFON director Joe Jordan, they can appear as any form.
Part of what they experienced was encountering a former live relative. In other words, they were encountering a dead relative on the craft. Wow. And what Barbara Bartholic stated was These entities have the ability to appear in any form.
Now, although this interview was supposed to be about him being able to catch these things flying around in the atmosphere with his sophisticated camera, he started to explain to me a version of the great controversy between the war in heaven, I guess you could say, but from a different standpoint. Let me continue.
And the idea was we were supposed to be a group of humans, normal humans, born as humans, raised as humans, things like that, in normal educational system that would tell the truth to people about what's really going on, because the entire planet is being run as a prison by a very negative group of extraterrestrials. And they have written agreements with the United States government and a couple other governments to do operations, to work, to do experiments, to do things here that are very, very bad. And this is not really in dispute. If you Google Chaim Eshed, H-A-I-M-E-S-H-E-D, he's the former head of the Israeli Space Directorate for 30 years. And that's the Israeli version of NASA. You'll find him talking. He thought he was going to get away with it with an interview he was giving in Hebrew, but it turned out that a whole bunch of people know Hebrew, and they translated it immediately into every language. So he was sort of caught with his pants down. But anyway, he's also a former general and now a college professor. But for 30 years, he was head of the Israeli Space Directorate. And he has said point blank that the U.S. government has written agreements with this group of extraterrestrials. They work mostly on underground bases, but they do. And he says sort of nicer things about them than what we say. But they're bad. They're bad. They're bad, 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 bad.
Good and bad non-human entities. At first glance, this may appear that Dr. Brown is telling us a story about what Christians know as the great controversy between God and Satan. But is it? The Bible tells us the story about Satan, a covering cherub which shielded the glory of God on his throne. As a being closest to God, he became enamored with his own pride of appearance and feeling that he didn't have to be guided by the loving rules that God gave his creation, but he felt that God was oppressing him and that he could be his own moral authority. By convincing a third of the angels of heaven, the good ones, Satan set up his rebellion on earth after tricking the original humans to disobey his rules as well. Although God could have squashed the whole issue initially and for good, it would have led to the rest of his creation serving him out of fear. So God put himself on trial, and as this cosmic litigation was put in place between Satan and God, the population of earth began to grow as well. And just as we see in the book of Job, Satan has been using this quarantine planet, well, Dr. Brown calls it the prison planet, as a testing ground to attempt to prove God wrong. That essentially, that we can be our own moral authority. That we don't need God's authority, we don't need his rules. We have our own rules, and we're good beings just the same as him. So I wonder, which side are we on in this big debate? Well, let's decide that later and get back to the story at hand. Does the U.S. government have agreements with these things? Let's continue.
And I understand, Brad, you come from a Christian perspective. You'd be very interested to know that the top of the food chain for that is a group of extraterrestrials who just happen to be reptilian. And they look a whole heck of a lot like the devil. But they're huge, they're big, they're just reptilian. But you can see how the reptilian devil sort of concept came into the Christian thinking, because people were able to pick up that there was something out there, and they're really very, very tough. Now there are some good reptilians, but they're small in number. They're not big. The dominant, and they're very abusive, and they're totalitarian, fascist, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not buying the reptilian idea, and I know it can't be factually proven. But a former occultist that became Christian, Roger Morneau, claims that these NHI are all very beautiful beings.
And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing, he says, among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood, and God did not bear with him like he does with people that make mistakes today.
And they are able to give what seems to be the powers to humanity. They would materialize into physical form, and they would be painted and worshipped. These entities are not bugs They are not reptilians, but they use these ideas to push an agenda.
They do reverse engineering assistance with the U.S. government, U.S. military, which is what they do with the crashed crash ET ships. Now, there are crashed ET ships, lots of them, and that's not in dispute. If you look at David Grush, you can Google David Grush.
Yeah.
He's been in congressional hearings, closed, open, public. He's a Pentagon whistleblower.
You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
The Pentagon is totally split. We wouldn't even exist at Farsight if it wasn't for half of the Pentagon that supports us. They've known about us and the extraterrestrial contact we've had for a very long time. And the other half of the Pentagon wants us completely wiped off the face of the earth. But the half that does support us keeps us alive and protected. And they, that half is where David Grush doesn't say anything that's not authorized. He's still got his clearance and he still works at the Pentagon. He doesn't say anything that's not authorized by his office. Mm-hmm. The other side of the Pentagon denies everything. They say nothing exists. So the Pentagon's really split.
This is true, at least the David Grush part. A former Pentagon official, David Grush, came out of the military and revealed that this UFO thing has been a real thing. He also said that he wonders what agreements we had with these so-called non-human intelligences as to whether or not they are reverse engineering crashed craft or gifted technology is still yet to be factualized, though. I want to stop you just for a second because I want to have a conversation because there's so much I could go off of just what you've said right now, and I want you to tell me more about what you have learned. But I was wondering if you could give me a little bit more information about. You said physically. I'm going to go back to the part where you said physically. You've had physical meetings with these things. I'm curious about two things. About those physical meetings, and your meeting with, you said the reptilians are...
No, we don't meet with reptilians. They're on the other side. They're of all species. They have them all. Everything that you can possibly imagine is on both sides. There's no such thing as, but a lot of them look exactly like you and me, and you couldn't tell the difference, except that they are totally telepathic. They can also speak with English, some of them. I have a daughter who's on the ship, for that matter.
Okay, this is not the direction I wanted to go with this interview. I wanted to know more about the meetings he was having. Does he have some sort of method that he uses before entering into these meetings, or is there any missing time during these meetings which would indicate if these were a form of vision that would indeed seem very physical? Has he ever left with any physical items that maybe he had been given to him by the NHI that would indicate if it was a physical meeting? But instead, we're going to get into some procreation ideas again. And this is a theme that we've seen over and over again as we've studied this strange phenomenon and dug deep into different stories that people have had about it. Again, I've said this over and over again on this channel. Angels cannot procreate. There is nothing in the Bible that indicates that they have any sort of genitalia. But there are even Christians who have interviewed on this channel their experiences that they said before they were Christian, they had fallen angels present themselves as UFOs, as aliens to themselves, and present themselves as beautiful alien women. And they would have encounters with these women, which would then lead them to return with the child in another experience, leading to a deep emotional bond with that child that would make it almost impossible to accept the reality that these things are fake. If you've ever had this happen to you, and you believe that you are seeing dead people, or live people, or alien babies, or alien greys of some type of lizard or insect people, when you see them again, ask them what they think about Jesus Christ. No, ask Jesus Christ, while in the presence of these entities, to help you understand what's happening here. Say, Jesus, please help me, and find out what happens next. I dare you.
The issue is that these beings are just, they look like, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. However, I was born here. as a human, and I went to the normal educational system, but I was not processed through the prison system of this is an amnesia processing system.
It's interesting that he's still saying that he's not an NHI. Other than the false flag that he believes was going on to be placed on him, I don't know why he's reiterating this. And I have never heard of this amnesia processing before. So let's continue. Maybe we'll get to talk more about catching UFOs on video, like I was hoping we would talk about.
So I'm going to get to your question about about the UFO photography, things like that. But the issue is that when people die, from a Christian perspective, you very often hear of people seeing the light. They die and then they see the light. The light is technology. It does exist, but it's not God. It's tech. And what happens is it draws you in, and then once you get drawn in, it's like a fly trap. The more you struggle against it, the more you get stuck. And then it zaps you with a very high voltage beat. I mean, just really way higher than lightning. And you lose your telepathic capabilities, you lose your remote viewing capabilities, you get memory wiped, you don't remember anything, you're just stunned. It's like an electroshock treatment in a mental hospital, but way worse. And then these AI, it's all computerized. This AI guy comes in and says, they flood you in with a whole bunch of fake memories. And then this AI guy comes in and says, we've been talking about your case with the Council of Elders. Oh, you see the Council of Elders over there? Yeah. And we think, remember those arguments you used to have with your brother? And what about your grandmother? Remember this stuff? And the mother, you had some troubles going. We think it would be better for you if you went back and worked on a few of these issues, personality issues, to refine yourself a little better. And but it's up to you. Free will. You have to decide. Now, without any memory and being rattled and everything, you're given advice from this gentle group of Council of Elders. Everybody says, "Sounds good to me," and off you come back into the system.
Okay, from what I can tell, what he is describing here is an advanced belief in reincarnation. The biggest problem I have seen with this idea is that if we are always going to go back when life was only a few ants and a few animals, whether it be Stone Age or Bible times, depending on your worldview, where were the other 8 billion souls? Assuming a soul is separate from the body, of course. And if they are flooding you, and if what he's saying is true and they flood you with a bunch of fake memories and wiping your memory and all this stuff, how are you supposed to correct your character if your character is written based on your previous memories? What the Bible says is that when we die, we are dead. We will be risen at the return of Christ. I want to ask you a question. Can we, I know a lot of this stuff, and probably with your research, you probably have more, but a lot of this stuff, what I've discovered is a lot of theory, a lot of, this is what we think is going on. How do you legitimize it? And I'm not saying that.
That's the point is, we at Farsight, everything in the whole planet is controlled by he said, she said stuff. Everything that you hear from anybody is always, I heard this from a reliable source. Mm-hmm. And it goes on. You always hear it from somebody. You're not given any raw data. So at Farsight, our whole thing, the whole plan from the ET guys is to do everything different and give you only the raw data, because that's the only thing you can see. That's where the videography stuff came out from. So all of our work is done with remote viewing, done under totally blind conditions, and we show you the actual sessions and the recorded blind on video, so you can actually see them, and then you see the person being told what the target is after the sessions are all done, and you can see their responses. And then we also teach people how to do what we do. So anyone from and we had to have our own streaming service, which is technically equivalent to Hulu, Netflix, Disney, whatever. It's run by Vimeo, because we had to have a situation where we couldn't be kicked off YouTube or something like that. Censorship is just rampant these days.
And so these physical meetings that you have with these things, is that through remote viewing, or is it a physical meeting like?
No, they're physical meetings, and like you and I are talking, but like there. I mean, I'm sitting on a bench with my own daughter on the ship. That type of physical meetings. See, what you're hearing now from me saying is he said, she said. I'm telling you stuff. So what we had to do was we had to first show people that these perceptual capabilities are correct, they're real, and that everyone should have them. You can't run a prison if people can all do telepathy and can do remote perception easy, because they know instantly. The way it's controlled, it's a psychological prison. It's not one with bars. So if everybody could see the truth, it would just, the whole thing would collapse. So we had to show that it was real. But then at some point we knew, it's like the cave allegory of Plato, where Socrates was, where you have three people in a cave and they're all looking at shadows, and then one person gets outside and sees the reality and comes back in and says, "Hey, you got to get away from those shadows. Come out the side of come out the cave. The whole world is out there. It's different." And the guys in the cave who were staring at shadows saying, "You're lying. This is reality. These shadows is it. This is all we have." And it's the same as the Jesus Thomas thing, where Thomas, was
Doubting Thomas.
Didn't believe, and then Jesus said, "Blessed are those who can believe without seeing."
What he is saying here is that he had to legitimize it somehow to show that the divination was possible. And he was able to acquire the data from it. The question I have is, to test this, we need to perform the same test in a controlled environment over and over again. At least from this Vice interview, it seems that the form of divination or far sight is not always accurate.
How accurate do you expect you'll be?
It varies with remote viewing. Sometimes it can be spectacularly on. You can wind up at the end of a session with three-dimensional clay models that very obviously are the location that you're talking about. Other times it's a complete bust.
And it's not always accurate because they are dealing with multiple finite beings that are guiding them.
But there's a difference between believing and knowing. Mm-hmm. So we had to actually go to the point of knowing, not believing. So we first had to do the remote viewing thing, and that involved training people that could do this. It took years for us to be good at this, to be able to do this. These are military-derived procedures, meaning the military had developed their own remote viewing procedures. They were primitive, they were not so good, but they worked. And then we evolved. To be quite honest, ETs told us how to fix them. So they evolved them, they told us what to do, they tweaked them. It was like a graduate student mentor type of relationship. We try one thing, they say, do this a little better. And so we developed them ourselves, but with guidance.
Is it like CE5?
What's that?
Is remote viewing is the process, to begin the process, is it like CE5?
No, CE5 is when you go out and you try to communicate but it's not trained. No one's trained to do it. This remote viewing is done using highly structured procedures that use templates. That's all done on iPads and then it's or tablets, and then it ends up being recorded on video where people work on a light board where they're writing on glass and it looks like they're writing in the air. Anyway, it's very sci-fi-ish in the look and very polished.
This is the process that they're going through. It's not them that's bringing up all these things that's a sixth sense or anything like that. They're contacting NHI. My question was more about the structure of this form of divination. What's the method? So I pulled an example from this website just to see how it works. It's interesting to see.
Today is going to be a complete lesson on how to do remote viewing from start to finish. So if you looked at any of my previous lessons, we are going to start off with a 20-minute meditation. The 20-minute meditation, we're going to use a mantra called Shanim Mana. Probing is the lifeblood of all remote viewing. What we're going to do here is you're going to probe in and you're going to feel an immediate response back, immediate kickback. Just be open to it. Don't try to dig for it. Don't feel like you got to be an archaeologist going. Just probe in with the intention of having something come back to you. And we're going to set the parameters right now.
They're contacting NHI.
But CE5 is a very primitive capability of trying to communicate mentally with someone who's been shunted down mentally that they can't do it normally. Normally, it's such an easy thing, you don't even think about it. I don't use English when I talk to my daughter. I don't have any trouble talking to her. We communicate like all the time, and it's no problem talking with her, and I've never used a word of English. Well, maybe every once in a while, but the point is, that's not what you use, and that's not what anybody else in the galaxy uses. They don't use physical languages like that. Oh, they can if they want to be quaint, But that's not how normal people work on ships. You got people of all different species, all different everythings, and how are they going to communicate? It's like a Tower of Babel if they're using physical languages. They don't have any trouble at all communicating telepathically. What you're trying to do when you think of prayer, talking to God, things like that, but it's like strange. It's like, how do you do it? You have to close your eyes, whatever. That's like everybody in the whole galaxy does that without even blinking. And so the whole issue is we had to cross the Rubicon, and actually then eventually, now that we developed the remote viewing side so people can see it with our own streaming service, it's huge. Then we had to show that the ETs were actually real, that the ships were actually there. So we had somebody come to us. He was the lead air traffic control person in the Washington, D.C. airport, the big one, the Reagan one. That's the most highly protected airspace in the world. His name was Lincoln Lounsbury. You can find him on YouTube, in fact. He just recently retired, but he'd also been an air traffic control person in a whole bunch of major airports. But for years and years and years, he was the lead air traffic control person in the Reagan airport and the Washington International. And he came to us on his own ticket.
Wow.
Which is sort of, and had a meeting in the studio right here. We have monitors all over the place. He had an Excel spreadsheet. He had a couple of those. He had lots of video examples. He had everything. And he showed us how to take pictures of the UFOs. He said they're all over the Washington, D.C. area. He showed us videos that he had them up on our monitors. And we said, what? And then he told us what cameras to buy. We were already using Panasonic cameras, GE5s. He told us we needed to upgrade to GE6. And then he told us the company to send the cameras off to, the website that should get them and connect it, to get them converted to full spectrum cameras. You see, with every camera, there's a sensor, an electronic sensor. Mm-hmm. And that sensor has a piece of glass on top of it that is a filter for infrared and ultraviolet. It only lets in visible light. Normally, you don't want infrared and ultraviolet coming in on your camera, because what that does is it screws up the image. You want only the visible light in. But if you're doing UFO photography, you need the infrared and ultraviolet, you need the other stuff. And then the reason is that the ET ships are all using stealth technology. Now, that means they're trying to hide themselves from you. They're trying. That tells you right away. When anyone tries to hide themselves from you, is that a good thing? No. That means they have information that they know they don't want you to have. Mm-hmm. And the ET ships are up there in tens of thousands. They're above your head. I don't know, what city are you in now?
Chattanooga.
Pardon me?
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga? Okay, right above you, right as we speak, there's probably in any 15-minute period, 30 UFOs flying over your house.
I don't believe that there are machines. I'm sure that he has seen machines and ships, and whether that be physically or in his mind remains to be said. And I'm sure no doubt we will see physical machines someday due to some physical deception. Remember, in the book of Exodus, when Moses put down his staff on the ground, the magicians and sorcerers were able to replicate the physical snakes and other plagues that God was doing. But Satan's deceptions have a limit.
I do not know your God, nor will I let Israel go.
Who are you to make their lives bitter in hard bondage? Man shall be ruled by law, not by the will of other men.
The power of your God is a cheap magician's trick. Join us.
You can't see them. They can be the size of the Titanic and you wouldn't see them because of two reasons. A, they're using stealth technology, and B, they're flying at about 20,000 miles an hour. That's 32,000 kilometers an hour. You can't see anything flying that fast. So you have to shoot at 120 frames a second. We didn't know this. the air traffic control person tells us. You have to shoot at 120 frames a second and shoot in infrared.
How did he know that?
What's that?
How did he know that?
That's a good question. And he came with all of this information, and it was perfect. He didn't leave anything untouched. Excel spreadsheets, all the data, the radar stuff. He was an expert at looking at the skies, and he was the lead person. And so we didn't blink. We just said, okay. And we got sort of information that we knew we had to follow this. So we bought the GH6 cameras. We sent them out to be converted to lifepixel.com, which takes that glass thing off of the sensor. It's too delicate to do yourself. I mean, it's complicated. And it's an expensive camera. You don't want to just mess around with something like that. So anyway, we did that. And then this is in January of last year. I did my first UFO shoot, trying to duplicate what Lincoln Lounsbury told us to do. By the way, he's also published in aviation journals. I mean, he's as good as they get. And within the first 15 minutes, we had over 30 UFOs. They were flying all over the place, and they were big, small. They were zooming. They were doing everything. Nothing was visible in visible light. We had multiple cameras going. We had visible light cameras. You couldn't see a thing. Nothing. And you also couldn't see them because they were flying so fast. All you see is like a blink, and you say, what? And you have to review it. Yeah, and you have to shoot wide angle because you can't use your telephoto lens to follow them because they're going too fast. So you have to shoot wide angle. So you have to shoot 4K. So to shoot 4K, wide angle, infrared, there was a lot of at 120 frames a second. That's a ton of information to put onto the sensor. So it wasn't until 2022 that the cameras became available in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's the whole story. So we couldn't have done it in 2021, 2020. I think you needed to have cameras that could do that. Okay, they have military grade cameras that could do it before that, but people that are professionals just didn't have access to those cameras until 2022. And so we got the cameras, we did all the stuff, and we saw stuff. And I have been studying the UFO phenomena for decades. And my jaw dropped when I saw how many ships that were up there, all of which 100% were invisible light, but I could see them clear as day. Now you can see a whole bunch of these if you go to my Instagram site, which is Instagram, and we use Instagram because people want immediate gratification. So if they just want to see some of these things, go to Courtney Brown Farsight, all one word, no spaces, Courtney Brown Farsight, and Instagram, and you can just watch. You can just look at a whole bunch of those things caught with our own cameras.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right here just for a second and cut it back to me. I think it's interesting. And did I start the thing again? Well, that would be interesting. Oh, we're starting the program all over again. No, what I think is interesting about this is that there's multiple people saying that this is a deception. I'm not the only one, but I think it's interesting that he's seeing these things. And I didn't include any of this stuff, any of the images and videos that he has of these things, because I am still trying to find one that I'm like, wow, that's definitively a UAP. And nothing takes a right angle. That's what I'm kind of looking for. But if you find something on his Instagram, if you go send it to me. I don't have time to peruse his entire portfolio of the things he's collected, but I do find it interesting that he is fairly certain that he's able to get these things, and it's from a aviation expert that has been doing this, which I'm also trying to get on the channel to interview him to see what's going on with that. If this is interesting to you, go ahead and hit that like button. Please hit that like button, because the more times you hit that like button, not the more times individually, but as a mass collective, if you guys hit that like button, it really does bring more people into the live and spread the video further. So there is a correlation between those two. I appreciate it. Let's continue to look and see what's going on here and in the interview as we continue to go over this strange thing that he's talking about. And of course, again, I don't believe everything he says, but I think it's interesting to know the opposite side of things so we can understand the deceptions here to come.
And so that was demonstrating that the UFOs are in fact real.
Yeah, I have no problem believing that there are things flying around up there. The Bible calls Satan the prince of the air. But now let's get into the narrative that I think is being fed to the people. I think we are seeing that the bad guys are also actually pretending to be the good guys. And the bad guys that the pretended good guys are talking about are sometimes the very good guys. I'll explain what that means later. Just take this next narrative with a grain of salt.
Now, those UFOs are UFOs from the bad guys.
Mm.
They're not being shot down. The U.S. government is getting tech. There's a Cold War right now between the good guys who we work with and the bad guys. And the Cold War is going to flip into a hot war at some point. But the Cold War, it's building up as we speak. Even we don't know the exact date, and they won't. Our guys won't tell us. But it's building up, and it's building up fast. These crises that you see happening in the world are being compressed right now. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be some super crisis that happens, and then the ETs are going to have to intervene, the good ETs, and that will make everything visible to everybody.
Super crisis. ET interviewing. And this will somehow make everything visible to everyone. It sounds like 2025, 2027 stuff to me. Time will tell, I guess. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, and neither really do these entities. But we'll see.
Then everybody will see. And then there's going to be a shootout. And everybody will see. So the whole house of cards is going to become open to everybody, and everything's going to collapse. And the whole, in terms of, the information secrecy stuff is going to all go away. But
are those bad ETs? Are they from the Orion area?
They used to be mostly from there.
So in a previous episode, we talked about the occult channeled book called Raw Material. In this book, they said that the bad ETs were the ones from the Orion area. That's interesting. They said that they were coming to enslave humanity on Earth because they created the 10 Commandments. Does this sound like a bad ET to you? I know another ET that created the 10 Commandments that's coming for you and me.
Question. Can you tell me about the origin of the 10 Commandments? Ra. The origin of these commandments follows the law of negative entities impressing information upon positively oriented mind-body-spirit complexes. The information attempted to copy or ape positively while retaining negative characteristics. Question. Was this done by the Orion Group? Ra. This is correct. Question. What was their purpose in doing this? Ra. The purpose of the Orion Group, as mentioned before, is conquest and enslavement. This is done by finding and establishing an elite and causing others to serve the elite through various devices, such as the laws you mentioned and others given by this entity. Question. It would be wholly unlikely an entity fully aware of the knowledge of the Law 1 to ever say, "Thou shalt not." Is this correct? Ra. This is correct.
The Orion system, this galaxy was there was about a 1,000,000-year Holocaust that occurred in this galaxy. And it was way worse than any Holocaust you had on the planet Earth here. And the Holocaust that happened in World War II was terrible, and it was real, but it was nothing compared to the Holocaust that happened across the galaxy. It was a war, what you would call a Christian perspective, you'd say it was a war in the heavens. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it was. It was a war in the heavens. It's settled down now, it's calmed down now, and in the Orion system, they were a focus for where the authoritarian, totalitarian forces were. It was a lot like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. They had an evil empire. It's all settled down now, however. But the galaxy is really big, and this planet is a very bad planet to live on for a long-term civilization. Every 25 or 30,000 years, you get a pole shift, things get wiped out. I mean, you need millions of years of calm planetary peace to have a nice long-term civilization. So this was really great as a biological, animals and plants type of a place. But it's not great for like long-term people. And so, but it became a refuge for people who were escaping from the bad times. And then the people
From an
in the Orion,
authoritarian government type,
yeah,
you have
what
to
they
do
call
this.
the Orion, and then the Orion Empire, they found out that it was here, that the people that they were trying to keep controlled there were escaping and coming here, and then they came here also, and they transformed this place into a prison.
A prison. Sounds a lot like a quarantine that we talked about on this channel. This sounds exactly like the Great Controversy, but told through the eyes of a fallen angel on their side of things. So the truth is that there was a war in heaven, just like he said, and Satan and his angels were forced out of heaven, and they took refuge on this planet, convincing Adam and Eve to side with them so that they could call this planet their headquarters, to continue their rebellion against God. I asked them about the authoritarian government because the UFO narrative, as told by fallen angels, would say that they were being oppressed by God's laws and rules. They would say that they had no freedom, even though we all know that God's kingdom is based on freedom of choice, which is why we're still alive by the grace of God.
And when they had full and complete control of the place as a prison was back, last time we saw it, and it was in geological records, was during the pyramid building days. Well, ancient Egypt during the pyramid building days was that the pyramids were built with ET tech. We can't move those blocks today. They're 80-ton blocks, and they were cut from far away, and they were cut with total perfect precision. You can't even put a human hair in between the blocks, and they're 80-ton blocks. So that was done with ET tech and slaves, and and that was how the Orions wanted this place to run. And all of the Greek and Roman gods were real people. Zeus, for example, he was a prison warden. He didn't fly around on a chariot, he flew around on a ship. He was also a serial rapist. He used to travel all over this planet and rape underage girls right in front of their parents. That's what Zeus was. He's a guy who should have been in prison. There's nothing good about him. All those blankety-blank statues of him, he's a mean, nasty, dirty bastard. And that's who he is. That's who Zeus is. Same with Ra, same with all the Greek and Roman gods. So they were real people, and they were in the place as a prison, and so on. Jesus came in.
Wait. Before we go into Jesus, let me ask you about that, because recently Bledsoe, you know who Bledsoe is. I'm sure you've been following this as I have. He said that he had Ra, also known as Hathor, come to him and they called him Hathor at first, but then she said, "I am Amun-Ra," which Amun means the creator and Ra means sun, the sun god. And so I think it's interesting that that you said that he was this. It sounds like he still is this, and he's still around. Is that not true?
Of course, nobody dies. And Hathor wasn't Ra. Hathor was a lady. She was psycho, and she worked with Zeus and others. And Ra and all of those people, and Ra, the Book of One and everything, they still exist. Look, this whole thing about from the Christian perspective, I'm not talking about your Christian perspective, I don't know, but the traditional Christian perspective is we can grant you eternal life if you get down on your knees and beg.
Wow. I appreciate that he said that it may not be my Christian perspective, which this idea is surely not. It is a Catholic church that instilled the idea of begging for eternal life, or paying for your way to go to heaven, or doing some sort of works-based solution for eternal life. This Catholic church is the same church who used to burn Christians for owning a Bible. They made you talk to a man in a dark closet about your sins instead of having a personal relationship with God. God doesn't want you to beg. He simply wants a relationship with you. And through that loving relationship, you will come to know him better and have that relationship that will save you.
Beg, right now, get your... And I said, but I didn't do anything. Then there's original sin. You didn't have to do anything. There was original sin. You had to beg, or we're going to damn you, burn you in the fires of hell for eternity. Otherwise, we'll give you eternal life in heaven.
Now, although he says that I've done nothing wrong and I'm good, the truth is we have all done something wrong. Have we ever stolen something? Have we ever coveted? If we have broken any of these 10 commandments, we have done something wrong. And God says that the whole earth is going to be destroyed someday, not because of our sin, but because it is. This earth will be destroyed, and the fallen angels with it. Satan is going to realize he has lost this chess game that he is playing with the celestial courts of heaven in this litigation. And he will flip this chessboard so hard, flip it upside down, and all the pieces will go flying everywhere. And God wants to save us from that day, but he cannot save us unless we believe in him and choose him instead of seeking our own way.
Now listen, how stupid that is. It's eternity either way. Eternity in hell, burning in the fires of hell, or eternity in heaven. The reality is nobody can kill is what we call an isby. We don't use the word soul or spirit because of the religious baggage that comes along with it. But nobody in the universe can kill somebody.
Here again is the fascinating idea that you can't be killed. Dr. Brown upholds the idea by using the idea of hell. Now, I probably think he would say that this example is because I'm Christian. But the truth is, most Christians have not even studied the idea of hell out, and how badly the Catholic Church got it wrong, and how it propagated this information, this wrong information, down through the other churches even until this day. Here's a quick study of what the Bible actually says about eternal hell. So Malachi says that the wicked will not all be eternally burned, that they will be stubble, burned up. The fire will leave neither root or branch. It continues that the righteous will walk on the ashes of the wicked. Ezekiel confirms that ashes will be on the earth, not souls. Psalms confirms that the wicked will be no more. They will vanish into smoke. And if you think that's just the body, the Bible clearly says that the soul, or the breath of God, the isbe, if you are inclined to believe that, will be burned up. It'll be gone. It is destroyed, dead. Ezekiel 18:20.
You can't kill an isby. And we call isby because that's someone who is for the purpose of being. You can't die. It's impossible. There's no possible way you or I or anybody else can die. But you can trick an isby. You can capture an isby. You can enslave an isby. You can lie to an isby. You can do all manners of things to an isby, but you just can't kill it.
I find this information fascinating because we are told in the Great Controversy that the immortality of the soul will be the last great deception.
And so the point is Ra alive? Of course he's alive. He's just like you and me. He's no different. He's just a person. He's a mean, nasty bastard. And that Ra book that Ra has written, if you read it really closely, it's all control freak stuff. People have to be oriented in the exact degree. Oh my gosh, if it's 1 degree off, the person has to be shifted. And everybody's like holding onto the seat. Oh no! And then he says, all this stuff is control freak in order to control this group. And he's trying to reinvent. He knows that the jig is up and the stuff about him is going to be coming out. And he's trying to reinvent himself so that he doesn't come across as bad like Zeus, the serial rapist. They're just trying to manipulate public opinion before the whole house of cards sort of comes down.
But I think you'll find it interesting that what you said, there's a Stanford scientist named Gary Nolan that has famously said he has some proof, some images showing that when people see some of these ships sometimes, they take pictures of it with their Polaroids, with their iPhones, and it ends up being a star in the sky. Could it be that these things can...
I like Gary. I think great stuff, but it's all very primitive stuff. The reality is you can take your camera equipment, and on farsight.org, our website, we show we show you the camera, the lens, how to get it processed, how to edit the video, all of that stuff. You don't have to worry about lucky photos. Take any 10-15-minute period in the middle of the broad day and go out and shoot your own stuff and then edit it on an appropriate computer, and you can see them for yourself.
I could hear in his voice that he's getting a little bit on edge, and I didn't want to press this any further. But I did find it interesting that 2 professors, although their work is not tied to the university, 2 professors, one from Emory and one from Stanford, disagree with each other on this topic. Now, don't get me wrong, Christians have disagreements on their beliefs all the time, so it doesn't really say anything to me. But for someone who studies this topic as a Christian, it makes sense that these things can project ideas into our head, including the visible ships. And I think that's exactly what's going on with his farsight idea. They're presenting stuff in his head. And if we can accept that they can present things into our heads, how can we know what's being presented if we're allowing these things into our life? But as for these ships, I'm not saying that there are physical deceptions that are soon to appear, but by majority, I think experiencers are seeing augmented reality by fallen angels.
something like 60% of the entire U.S. budget, military budget, is totally unaccounted for, and they don't know where the money went.
Yeah.
Now, are you telling me with all that money they couldn't hire an accountant? The reality is it's being thrown into this American secret space program, which is enormously expensive. But what happens is, if the bad ETs shoot down the ships of the good ETs, the hot war will break out immediately. So they can't do that. And the good ETs can't shoot down the ships of the bad ETs for the same reason. However, the good ETs are here. They're militarily dominant in the solar system, but on the planet Earth, the bad ETs are totally dominant. The good ETs have a.
And this is what you're being told through Farsight, through your.
Yeah, but we know this. We deal with these people all the time. It's just a fact. And
I
but
know,
I know
I know.
you don't know it's a fact.
I'm just trying to establish
But
those facts for my viewers.
I can give you the evidence for it by showing you the pictures of the bad ETs. Then you ask yourself, well, why aren't they showing themselves? Which is a good question. You should ask themselves. But now we show you how to see them in the first place. So you don't have to question. You don't have to believe anymore. You can go to, there's a huge difference between believing and knowing. And when you see the ships on your own computer, it changes from believing to knowing. And then the first thing you say is, why the heck are they trying to hide themselves? Now, Chaim Eshed, former head of the Israeli space threat for 30 years, it says it's written in the agreements that everything must be kept secret. It's part of the written agreements. It's not something that they just think humans can't take it. It's part of the written agreements. And though for the U.S. to continue to get tech help, they have to enforce the secrecy.
Keep it private. Yeah.
Part of it's written and it's been signed by U.S. government people. Now the good ETs, I sort of consider them. You might consider them. They're sort of fanatical free will people. It's like fanatical, meaning if you agree to something, you can even agree to be a slave. That's your choice. They'll leave you alone. They won't touch anything if it's free will. They're fanatical free will. The bad guys are just the opposite. They like to manipulate and control, and the heck with free will.
I think this is one of his most telling points. In the occult, good and bad are reversed. From the Christian view, this is called Gnosticism. And it's exactly what the narrative says. In Christianity, the fallen angels are the ones who want to be free to do what they want, or do what thou wilt. It's the Christians who want to keep the commandments. They want to keep the law, because we, although we are saved by grace, when we have God living in us, we don't want to steal. We don't want to lie. We want to have what we have and not covet someone else's stuff. We don't want to commit adultery. These are the things that God said, I will put in your heart. All of the 10 commandments. So the law, although we are not under the condemnation of the law anymore, we, as Christians, keep the law. So I think it comes at no surprise that the UFO and alien agenda, which many researchers have said has a heavy tie to the occult. Tom DeLonge says this many, many times in many different interviews as he's been studying it, and also has changed the freedom to choose your own way into something good. So if everyone chooses their own way, it would be, what do I think against what do you think? What if my way is to get rid of you and your way is to get rid of me? So if we all can't agree on something, then what good is it to live in chaos? This isn't love. This isn't law. This essential freedom will become anarchy.
So we have a situation which is free will agreements between the U.S. government and the bad ETs. And the good ETs say, well, we can't do anything about that unless there's an uprising from below. So what they have been doing is they've been working with us, but what they've been doing also is working with scriptwriters, for example, in Hollywood. When the scriptwriters go to sleep, they drop in plot ideas.
Yeah.
So that when the scriptwriter wakes up, now they're free will ETs, so they can't force the scriptwriter to use those ideas. But the scriptwriters wake up and say, oh, I've got a great idea for a new movie.
That's exactly what happens.
And that's where Star Wars came out of. That's where Star Trek came out of. That's where the Matrix movies came out of. All the major science fiction stuff, which is oriented around getting the human population used to the idea of there being extraterrestrials, that there being intergalactic conflict.
This is true.
Everyone does not. So if that didn't happen, everyone would be too dumbed down. It'd be like, what?
How
What do
did
you
you
mean
figure
there's
this out?
I didn't figure this out. I live with these people. I deal with these people all the time. I've been dealing with them since I was a kid. When I used to sleep as a kid, I had two gray guys, the gray guys, the long wraparounds. I had two on my right side and two on my left side in the bed, and they stayed there all night. This wasn't something I came up with or dreaming.
And they
I
told you this, or I mean, how did you find out about the Hollywood stuff?
But they were very. They didn't ever do anything bad to me. I just assumed they were there to protect me, and that was in that. They were just always there, and then I was interacting with them my whole life, and then that's how. How do you think Farsight came about? And how do you think all of our how did we get our financial resources? How did we get all the ideas that we have? We have studio. We have the latest camera equipment. We're totally equivalent to Hulu, Netflix, Disney, and stuff, but we're doing this, and we're the only venue on the whole planet that does this. Do you think you can say I'm sort of a genius, I'm smart at science, it makes me feel good, but do you think I'm really that smart to do all that stuff? We get advice. And what do you think my daughter does when I go up there in a ship? I sit down and she tells me stuff. She tells me, like, she gives me whole briefings of what we have to do and things like that, and then I come back and we do it. And so the issue is that Farsight is very unique, and showing the videos of the ships was really important. It's not that we can show you the video that you will believe. That's all he said, she said stuff. You will always find a debunker that'll come out and say, that was Photoshop. Oh, that was CGI. That was this. We have to show you how to do it yourself. The debunker has no recourse to that. We only show you raw data. And we show you how to replicate the raw data, how to get it yourself, how to do it yourself. And when we do remote viewing stuff, we show you the person doing it under blind conditions. We video record it so you can see it being done in a theatrically entertaining way that's fun to watch. And then we see you get to see when they're actually shown with the target, because they do everything with remote viewing totally blind. They're just using their mind stuff, the stuff that everyone's supposed to have, but they don't have because of this amnesia processing system that sort of knocks it out of everybody. But so that's, if you think about this, it's very simple. If you don't mind me, I know your Christian perspective, let me just use a Christian example. Jesus, he was a way better dude than the Christian religion posits him at. He's very approachable, he's very friendly, he was way better. What happened was, he had a whole slave society. You'd have a great time talking with him. There was an entire slave. There was a Greek society, the Roman society. They were all slaves. They had these fake gods that were serial rapists and everything that they got everybody to worship. And Jesus came down. What's that?
Oh, I thought you meant Jesus had serial rapists.
No, the bad ETs that were running the place as a prison. I was talking about Zeus and people like that.
Okay.
And now Jesus came down. He's with the good side. He came down and he said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do an experiment. We're going to try to insert some good ideas and let them percolate through society for a few hundred years and see if things changed. So he came in with, God is a loving God. Love is the thing that drives the universe. Chill out, forgive, forget, all that type of stuff. And that started to catch on. People started to say, I don't have to be tortured all the time with this, Zeus and stuff like that. That started to catch on. And then the bad ETs said, this is going to be a threat. So at some point in time, the ancient Greek and Roman stuff was becoming obsolete. It just wasn't working. And the Christian stuff was starting to spread out. So then they flipped over and they said, okay, we're gonna adapt it. So they had the Roman Empire sort of shift. They had the Roman stuff switch over to Christianity, and then there was a saint made for every Roman and Greek god, and so that they sort of transformed everything into that. And so what you had then is a situation where the whole Christianity thing got distorted and disturbed, and they said, now we have to transform it into an authoritarian use. You beg for forgiveness, or you're going to be damned forever.
The
type of
Catholic
thing.
Church has really ruined a lot of things, and that's what I've noticed in studying this. Yeah.
But these are people that have had millions of years at learning how to psychologically manipulate a prison population, and they were good at it. So the Jesus experiment actually sort of worked, but it got corrupted along the way. And then, Jimmy Carter's idea of inserting human rights into international diplomacy. That was where it first started. That came out of his Christian background. So it did have an effect. Martin Luther King, it did have an effect on people, but it was still mixed in with the authoritarian controls. And every once in a while, when someone like Martin Luther King would come about and really start to restate the original message, they get shot. People, and it's not an accident that they get shot. And the authoritarian ETs, they manipulate people mentally to get these things done.
You're talking about
And
JFK?
so JFK was clearly assassinated. We have a whole JFK project on that. Our role at Farsight is to tell the history of all these things. What happened with JFK, what happened with Martin Luther King, what happened with 9/11, what happened with everything. Our role is to completely take away the secrets and to show you the raw data, so that you can decide for yourself.
Okay, so the Raelian movement had the same agenda. They believed that Rael was here to reinterpret the Bible and Bible history. I would be careful to take the advice from these manipulative, supposed extraterrestrials.
And then, and so what happens is the current experiment that's going on, we're trying to do things different than the way it was done in the Jesus day, which is to let things go slow and percolate through society. Because the bad ETs, by manipulating people mentally, they can control things if it goes slow. So we're trying to cause this disclosure thing to happen fast, so fast that it can't be controlled. That's the key. That's why all of these world crises are coming to a crunch. And they're building over the next few months. You can see them building. Is there a plan? Yeah, it's part of the plan.
I know, but is there a timeline plan that you guys have?
They're not telling me the time, but they are telling me that they're compressing things. The good side is helping to compress things. And when everything finally gets to a point where it can't be, that the good ETs have to intervene, or or people are going to destroy themselves, that's when it pops.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of this idea of the externalization of the hierarchy? This where they come out. They've talked about this in several different writings, and not only the one you mentioned, where it was the book. What was it called? The one where we talked about the Orion and all that stuff. They talked about 2025 and 2027 and all this other stuff that's happening right now. Have you heard anything about that?
I'm not told the exact. By the way, anything that you hear from any of those sources, all he said, she said stuff, and you never know how much heavy manipulation is involved in it. You just don't know.
Well, we certainly agree on that point. We just don't know. But I do find it fascinating, and I like to keep up on events, even if they are not as sure as Bible prophecy. And I think that we are counseled to understand this stuff. After all, if an insane man was screaming out in the town square that he was going to do something terrible on such and such date, even if you had nothing to do with him, would you still take notes? I know I would. But what gets me is Dr. Brown says that these channeled books that talk about dates cannot be trusted, which I agree with him on. But how can we trust the same entities that are telling him things about present events and future events? If these channeled books can't be trusted, which I agree with, we can't trust the other channeled stuff either in Farsight. That's my concern.
So on my side, they just say we have to deal not with any hearsay stuff. So that was one of the reasons we kept all of our ET contacts secret, because we didn't want to get into the he said, she said stuff. We didn't want people to say, what did they tell you? We didn't want any of that. Sure. We wanted people just to see the data that we were showing. First, to see the remote viewing data, how we did it, the methods, as well as how it was done, and recorded all live so people can see it being done. And then to do it in a way that was theatrically entertaining, that was really big. And the ETs, they actually wanted us to have the good cameras. They really insisted on the good cameras. Now, this is something that may be interesting to you, right? This is interesting because one of the reasons they wanted the good cameras is the whole galaxy is watching this. This thing is big. This is big because you have the prison systems, you have the authoritarian, you have the reptilian empire is huge. They have lots of societies under their control. And you have a lot of sectors of the galaxy that are part of the free side. And this is one of the biggest prison systems in the galaxy. And everyone wants to know what happens. Everyone wants to know, is it possible to break out of the reptilian grip? Now, from a Christian perspective, you might say, is it possible to break out of the devil's grip? But the point is it possible to break out? It's strong. And a lot of Christians say the devil is powerful. Well, the devil is blanky powerful. They're reptilians and they have tech. It's not mystical stuff. It's tech. And they have tech and they have psychic abilities and they repress the population. And the rest of the galaxies and the sections of the galaxy that are under reptilian control, a lot of those people are looking and sort of saying,
what's going to happen next?
This might we think it's possible we might be able to break out.
Oh, we're so close to the same story of us getting off this planet. I couldn't agree more. The universe is watching Earth as a spectacle. I mean, imagine a world that has sinned, something that has never been seen before. So no matter if you believe that there are only angels and God as righteous beings in heaven, or if you believe that there are a plethora of other uncountable planets with life on them watching, this world is truly a theater of mystery. Will God's truth about the saints, the ones who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus, according to Revelation 14:12, will they get off this planet, or will Satan have his way and keep his headquarters? The Bible has been accurate from the very beginning of time. In fact, we can see in Daniel 2 that during the time of the king, it was actually foretold what would happen.
And the free ones are saying, they don't like the reptilian side either. Is it possible that we can, first of all, the 8 billion people on the planet, and there's maybe how many billions in the wings that aren't in physical bodies? Like 30 billion? I don't know, I'm just guessing. They came from other places. They came from planets all over the place. And you know what happens when you die in other places, in free will places? You don't lose your stuff. You don't lose your house. You don't lose your family. You don't lose your bank account. You don't lose anything because you don't lose your memory. And everybody knows you're not dead. Your body just didn't function anymore. You can get another body or start over again as a kid. Or the point is, you don't lose your stuff. You don't even lose your car. But here, you lose everything, and the vultures come in, and you hope to control a little bit of it by writing a will and stuff like that. That's abnormal, but that's part of what the process is here. And so what you have in a society like this, we first have to say, and they had to work with us for years in order to get us to the point. We couldn't drop in from the sky and just start telling people this stuff. We had to grow from being humans in the first place, going through the human educational system. Everything had to be homegrown, because if we were coming from above, we could be killed, because there's no external ET contact that isn't shootable. That's why it's totally not allowed.
So they're physical entities.
Of course they're physical entities.
We've always seen this in Hollywood. At least that's how they present it in Hollywood, as if there's some ethereal type whimsical being.
Ethereal. There's tech. There's nothing ethereal. There's tech. There's tech. It's technology. They have millions of years of technology. In those planets, they have technology. Everything that can be invented has already been invented. There's no technological advantage between the good ETs and the bad ETs. They both have the same weapons.
It's fascinating to me that he dives into the same story as Stargate SG-1 over the overarching theme of seeding humanity. Or maybe, I guess I should say, that Stargate propagates the UFO narrative that is being told to humanity by fallen angels, which I think he might agree with more. And I actually probably would too, just as has been said, but this isn't what the Bible says.
There's no new weapons that's going to be discovered. Like in human stuff, they come up with a better bomb or a better ship or a better fighter. Everything's equalized on that level. Everything now is on the level of society, is on the level of the social sciences, not the technical sciences. And the U.S. military, the one that's cooperating with the bad ETs, they've turned out to be lapdogs of the negative ETs, of the bad ETs, where they're actually flying around, and they're the ones that are crashing the UFOs that they're getting the reverse tech out of. So when you hear David Grush talking about the craft retrieval program, who do you think they're shooting down? They're shooting down my friends. They're shooting down my people. They're shooting down the good ETs that are here to help. And we can't defend ourselves. When they shoot us down, we're trying to help humanity. So if you shoot down the American secret space program ships, which would be easy for us to shoot down, if you shoot down those ships, then the whole thing won't work, because then the whole America will say, okay, they're the enemy, they're fighting us. So we can't shoot down them. So the bad ETs give the tech to the humans, and the humans go out and shoot them down, knowing that they're not going to start a hot war, because the good ETs won't fight back. That's how come they're...
Sorry, go ahead.
That's how come they're getting the ships to crash. And then the U.S. military zooms in, picks them up, zips them out. And what do you think they do to the survivors? These are nice people, and they torture them. Torture. Like, you won't believe how bad they torture them. And they get them over to the bad ETs. And
So are all
that's
these
what's going
ships
on right now.
all these ships crash? Because there's a researcher at another university, I forget her name, Popowski or something, but she says that, and not just her, but many other people have said that there have been gifts of technology and locations, specific locations where things have landed and been basically given to the government. Is it all? And she says very little of it has crashed, but it's actually mostly gifts.
All junk. That's all junk. They have tons of ships. It's not just a few. They have many ships, and they shoot them down out of the sky. They capture the surviving occupants, and then they take the ships and they put them into places like Area 51 underneath, and other places. They got bases all over the place.
I realized at this point we are getting into a bit of conjecture. I'm not quite sure how to prove any of this stuff, but my goal here was to talk about this idea that the majority of these things are not crashed. According to one of the professors, Diana, I believe, there are specific locations where these are gifted into the government. At least that's what they say. This would make the most sense to me. For if the government is in possession of technology, you wouldn't want to get it broken apart or wrecked, because that would ruin the whole Prometheus effect. And I believe that's probably a real thing. We'll see. More to come. You got to keep watching the channel. I'll find those facts.
And all the stuff that you hear about this special place, that's just all part of the disinformation stuff. There's no special place. They got these things all over the place. And they shoot these things down all over the planet. And they're using ET tech flown in ships that are being flown by the American secret space program. That's how they're getting. Do you think these people can build ships that can cross an entire galaxy and defend themselves from hostile forces, and then when they get here, the motor breaks? I'm serious. Do you think that they can't build? Do you think they need to hire a decent mechanic? That as soon as they enter or get near the Earth, get into the atmosphere and something, the thing can fly across the whole galaxy. But then as soon as it gets here, it stops functioning. It runs out of gas. I mean, they're being shot down, and they're not the bad ETs. So when we show you how to take pictures of the ships, they're the bad ETs. They're not the good ETs. Because if they were the good ETs, you'd see them shot down.
You did say, though, that they are giving gifts of technology to the government, right? How is that being done? I assume that was what she was talking about.
They have the ships. They have the crash ships. They have them in these underground hangars. Under Area 51 is a huge nexus for a lot of stuff like that. And
so how are the gifts being done? How is it being gifted to the U.S. government?
Well, the U.S. government goes out and collects the stuff and brings it into, using Area 51 as an example, brings it into the hangars underneath Area 51. And then human scientists start working on those things. And then the reptilians tell the human scientists what to do to start taking the things apart and understanding how to build them, rebuild them, understanding the tech. Now, the tech help that they're given is not enough so that the humans could then, with their secret space program, fight the reptilians. The reptilians could knock the American secret space program out in a blink of an eye. So they're not being threatened by this. But it's enough to shoot down the good ETs because the good ETs aren't defending themselves. And mind you, if the good ETs want to be protected, they know when they come in, especially like when we interact with them, they come in and they're all prepared. But every once in a while, a ship from the good ETs will come in and be sort of tricked into a situation where they, get pulled into sort of a vulnerable area, and then whoosh, American secret space program ships come out, boom, 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 they shoot, and the good guys won't shoot back. They could shoot back, but they don't shoot back. They crash the ship. They let themselves be captured. We have a whole project just on that.
The good, the bad ETs are not different, as I have said before. This is a narrative, a story, a lie. Fallen angels are shape-shifting to look like good and bad entities.
Anyway, so that's what we do. And if you go to our website, farsight.org, and go to the top of the nav bar, a few links down, you'll see information on how to take the how to do videography of the actual UFO ships.
That was the topic. We kind of went all over the place, but yeah, that was the topic we were starting out with, wasn't it?
That was the topic. But the real thing it's like, and it's also like going fishing. You like to go fishing sometimes to catch a fish, and you never know what you're going to catch. So every time you go out shooting UFOs, you never know what you're going to catch. And so it's sort of exciting and it's fun. And you put the stuff, you can't see them until you get the footage onto your computer. And once you get the footage onto your computer, then you slow it way down. That's why you have to shoot at 120 frames a second. You have to slow it way down because it goes so fast. See, at 30 frames a second, which is normal, you only get 1 or 2 dots on the screen, and you don't know what that is. But at 120 frames a second, you can actually see it crossing the screen. And you have to slow it way down, and you see each frame, and then you see what it looks like. You see the configuration. You see, and there's ways to estimate the speeds that Lincoln Lounsbury talks about. And then you have the ability to look by zooming in and post when you're editing the video to see that they have no wings and they don't flap their wings. That's how you know it's not a bug or a bird. You can see bugs and birds, but we made a major discovery. I expect to get a Nobel Prize for this one of these days. It's going to recognize. We discovered that all bugs and birds that fly, they have wings. Yes. And then we also discovered that when they fly, they flap their wings. Yes, we discovered. And so what you do when you zoom in, that's how you tell if it's a UFO or a bug or a bird. The UFOs are typically cigar-shaped or saucer-shaped or triangular-shaped or whatever, but they don't have wings, and they don't flap their wings. So now in the wintertime, in the dead of winter, it's really great to do UFO photography because there's no bugs. And or if you go to a very high building, you go to a building like the top of a tall parking deck or something like that, you got above the bug line. And sometimes at the beach, if you get during the day, there's a lot of wind coming in from the water in, and they blow the bugs away from the beach. So that's often very useful. But the wintertime is great, like in a cold place where there's a lot of snow, and you wait till the cold, what do they call it? They call it a winter cyclone or something, the cyclone bomb or something, whatever they call it, where temperatures drop down, to below zero. Well, those are great times in the middle of the day, bright sunny day, freezing temperature, just no bugs. And you don't have to worry about things that have wings or flapping because there's no bugs out there. And then you do your shooting at that time. But with all other ones, you have to, if it's done in the middle of the summer or the spring or fall, you have to zoom in and post really a lot, which is why you need good cameras. Now you can do it. Lincoln Lounsbury has become really good at doing this with like phones. The only trouble with doing it with phones is you typically can't go above 60 frames a second. And you don't get as good a resolution, clarity with the phones. Some of the phones are really great, but still they're phones. They're using smaller sensors. So that's why we use, at first we used the bigger sensors. But you can do stuff with phones. You have to trick the phones, however, to do infrared stuff to see the things. So, you know those 3D glasses that you get at the movie theater? One's red and one's blue. Well, if you cut the two lenses out with the scissors and you staple them together, you get this. And now, if you look at this, you can't see. See how you can't see through it? That's because it's blocking all visible light. But half of the sensor is red. That's going to let in the infrared. So if you put this on your phone with tape and you cover your camera with tape like this, what happens is there's no light coming in and the camera goes bonkers on the phone trying to
up the gain.
See anything.
Yeah.
So it ups the gain. It cranks up the gain, and the only light that it can get in when it's cranking up the gain is the infrared, because the visible light is blocked out completely. So you're tricking the phone using this thing. You're tricking the phone into picking up more of the infrared, and that's how Lincoln Lounsbury has been able to get video photography out of a phone. It's a cheap trick, but they only cost $1. On Amazon, you can get those things, or go to the movies and just get those things and cut them out and tape them together, and staple them together.
All the movies are polarized now, and they don't have the red.
Yeah,
blue
yeah,
stuff.
they don't have these ones, but you can still get these for like $1 on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you what you know about the Vatican's archives and the Pope and all this stuff that's coming out recently.
Nothing. We did one project on the Pope Francis, and we also did a project on a sort of a history of popes, a number of popes going back. But we never did anything on the Vatican archives and stuff like that. We were mostly interested to see how much manipulation was being done on the part of human leaders. We were interested in political leaders as well as religious leaders. And in fact, we did find, very strong manipulation going on. I mean, these people are, these ETs are, these are telepathic. I mean, and they can manipulate things behind the scenes. And there's a book, if you want to see, a guy who's a very nice guy. He's retired now, but this is David Jacobs' book, Walking Among Us. Okay, now David Jacobs, as well as people like John Mack, the late Professor John Mack. He's dead now. He was killed in a car in a car incident in London. We see that's sort of Anyway, that's it. The abduction. So anyway, abduction. That's John Mack. He was a professor at Harvard, and David M. Jacobs. He was a professor at Temple University. He's now retired. So in terms of people who study this type of thing, professors who study this type of thing, I'm the last one standing. But you do get people like Gary Nolan starting to come out and things like that. So that's very useful. But there are very few of us. Avi Loeb, yeah. But he's actually working with like astronomical type of stuff, looking for a single, like evidence of a single ship. And like, I listen to that and I say, but what the heck are you talking about? Evidence of a single ship. They got ships all over the place. And so, I mean, working with astronomical photos, trying to see if Oumuamua was a real spacecraft or was just whatever what it was. And I'm saying, my gosh, they got ships crashing all the time. And if you're an astrophotographer, does it take farsight to take a Panasonic GH6 and just point it at the sky and see the UFOs right over your head? I mean, what you got multi-millions of dollars with a Harvard budget and this type of thing, and you can't afford a camera that just shoots the UFOs right over your head. So I it's like, anyway. So the only thing I would sort of wrap up with, if somebody has a doubt, it's like I like the state of Missouri because on the license plate you say it's a show me state, meaning they don't trust anybody. So if I could sort of end with one thing, I'd say, don't trust anybody. And so, okay, you can hear me say it's running as a prison planet. Don't even trust me. And I'm serious. Everything that I've just told you, don't trust any of it. Don't trust anything that anybody says. Only trust your own eyes. There's so much manipulation going on. Only trust what you see.
Sounds like Doubting Thomas.
And if you want to see something fast and cheap, just take out your phone and go to Instagram. And inside Instagram, go to Courtney Brown Farsight, Farsight, all one word, Courtney Brown Farsight, no spaces, and just look at some of the video recordings that we have of the UFOs. And then you say, and in the text under that, we have all the specs for how that was recorded. And then you can go to our website, farsight.org, and we have complete details of what we do, the cameras, the settings, how to get it converted to a full spectrum. And when you see it yourself and you've done it, then you don't have to believe any he said, she said stuff. You don't even have to believe me. You say, I did it myself. I saw it. I have the ships on my own computer. I'm looking at them right now. Then it's a difference between believing and knowing.
All right, let's pause it right there just for a second. He's wrapping up here, but I think it's very important to point something out. I'm going to bring it back to myself as a cut. It's interesting. This whole thing, man, I did it again. We're going to start the intro again. What I think is fascinating about this is that he's obviously pushing towards the idea that you don't want to take anything in unless you could prove it by scientific fact. The Bible says otherwise. And I want to make that absolutely clear because I'm not sure, but I assume that he is actually trying to push against the idea of belief. And since he is a scientist, he is not a Christian, and he is deep inside this UFO phenomenon. I want you, anybody that's a praying person, which I know you guys all are, keep this man in your prayer lists. Man, he's deep into it, and some of the things we can kind of take and look at and hold and go, huh, that's interesting that he says it this way, but other things that he says is twisted completely. And the whole idea we are free sounds fantastic until you realize that the freedom that you get wrapped up in with bad habits, through sin, through the methods of not doing things correctly, through lawlessness, ends up being a slave master to you. And so in this respect, its freedom becomes your slave master. And that's what I don't think he completely understands through this whole thing. Let me take this lower third off of the screen. The Bible says in Hebrews 11:6, and without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Hebrews 11:6. And this is me injecting this into the end of the broadcast because this was a long broadcast to edit. I spent the whole day doing this, and I have a little bit more to say at the end. So hold on to your hats. It's got about a minute or so left. You want to see the end of this. It's really fascinating. Here we go. Where is it? There it is. Cut.
People who want to control you tell you that believing is important, and they want you to believe them. When you say, why should I believe you? That's what you should always say. Why are you special? Why should I believe you? And then be like from the state of Missouri. Show me. I want to see the data. If you're saying, okay, XYZ is correct, good. Hey, I'm all for it. Can you show me? Be pleasant about it. Just show me the data. So when hear people talking about the UFOs and this is what's right and this is wrong, you say, great, I think it's so interesting. Can you show me? No, I heard it from an authoritative person. Okay, exactly who and what did the person see? Can I see it? Can I see it? So what I would really emphasize is, even with us at Farsight, don't believe anything. We don't ask you to believe. We don't ask you to follow me. We don't ask you to follow us. We're not asking you to get followers, like to become a cult and have a whole bunch of followers. We're not asking anything like that. We just show you the raw data. And if you're interested enough in the raw data, we show you how to get it yourself. Convince yourself by seeing and knowing your own stuff. That's what I'd really like to sort of, and as far as religions are concerned, since you're a religious person, I'd really like there to be much more attention given to the light after death. There's nothing in the universe that's not tech. And when you die, you will see the light. People should start asking, what the heck is that all about? Don't just say, oh, it's God. No. If there's a light, somebody turned on the light. Find out what that's. Just start asking questions. Don't take anything in terms of, I read it somewhere. I believe it somewhere. Someone told me it's right. Just say, that's great. I think it's wonderful. Can I see? Show me. Anyway, so we're ending with the note of the state of Missouri.
No, very good. Very, very good. Well, I appreciate your time. And again, this has been fascinating talking to you and chatting about this stuff. And I'd like to talk a little bit more later.
It's my pleasure. And I wish you the best, and I'll talk to you later.
Very good. All right. So obviously, I don't know if it was apparent to anybody else, but it was to me that he was trying to use this as a platform, kind of, to present his information. And you know, I let him do that, but I have full control of the edits, and I was able to inject the truth in there. And that was the whole goal, was to understand what's going on through his perspective, and dig further into what drives, what's the foundation of this whole thing. And I think we successfully did that by finding out that his whole basis of this thing is the perception of what he can see, which can be manipulated. This is what satanic beings, and yes, he's absolutely right, there's more than just Satan on this earth. This is what those minions are doing. They have over us is the ability to live longer. They've been around for thousands of years. And they also have the ability to make us think and see things we don't normally see. For some reason, this is an innate part of them. I don't necessarily believe wholeheartedly, I can't prove this, you can't prove me wrong, but I don't believe that they're using technology to do this. I think that absolutely they've been given this, angels have been given this ability to touch neurons in the brain of some kind to make you remember things, insert dreams and visions and all this other stuff that we know good and bad angels can do. So when he says, don't believe, don't just believe, no. That knowing can be manipulated just as belief can be manipulated. And the second thing he ended on was fascinating too, because we, like I said previously, the big deception at the end, we know will be about the state of death. This, if you don't understand the state of death correctly, you're opening yourself up to be manipulated in the very last days by evil entities, which is happening right now. Boy, if you can't see how close we are to the end of time, this is it, folks. And I think it's scary to me how close and accurate he is to the wrong belief that we know is being presented at the very end of time. So I encourage anybody who's watching this for the first time and going, what in the world is this channel talking about? This channel is talking about the last day events. This channel is talking about a new form of spiritualism that's happening. This channel is talking about the idea that this whole thing is in Congress, Senate, the government, and it's becoming a much bigger deal. And so our goal in this channel is to dig further into it, understand it from a spiritual Christian perspective before it's too late. That way we can help other people. This is not, hey, let's read from the Satanic Bible. We don't do that here. This is not, hey, I believe in aliens. We don't do that here. But this is 100%, let's dig further and understand we're going home soon. So if you're with me on that and you look forward to the day that we aren't here anymore on this weird planet, join me, number one, in praying for this man. Number two, in studying this thing. Let's do it 24/7. Join me on Discord. So go to patreon.com/strangenormal and I'll see you there, and it'll be a riot of the time. I'm not doing credits tonight, Patreon member list tonight, because the cameras are all screwed up. I had such a time. We almost didn't even go live tonight because this is quite the interview. I've had 3 cameras go out for some reason and I got 1. So I had to do some edits in order to make this thing work. And that hasn't happened for 6 to 8 months. I don't know what's going on, but I'll figure it out later. It's having some kind of weird error. My name is Bradley, and this has been pure strangeness and absolute normalcy. Strange normal. We'll see you guys next time.